Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're setting our sights on, well, a place that really sits on the edge of the map, doesn't it? Sakhalin Oblast.
Exactly. It's this territory that's often seen as remote, maybe a bit misunderstood, and it's unique Russia's only federal subject made up entirely of islands.
59 islands, based on the sources. Sakhalin itself, the big one, and then the Kuril chain.
That's right, 56 Kuril islands. And when we say federal subject, for anyone not familiar with Russia's structure, it's basically a major region, sort of like a state or province.
Got it. And its story is shaped by these massive forces, geographical, political.
Absolutely. Everything seems to collide there, quite literally in some cases.
So our mission for this deep dive is to take all that data you shared, the geology, the history, and really build a clear picture for you, the listener.
And let's tackle that remote idea head on. You hear Russian Far East, you think impossible journey, right?
Yeah, that's the perception.
But it's actually, well, surprisingly accessible. Okay, the flight from Moscow is long, about 8 hours.
That's a trek.
It is, but we saw those economy ticket prices, around 30,000 rubles mentioned. It's not like, prohibitively expensive for everyone. It's reachable.
That contrast, accessible yet feeling like the edge of the world, seems key.
It's a running theme, yeah.
Okay, let's dig into the literal foundation then, the geology.
Right.
This place is defined by the Pacific Ring of Fire. What does that mean day to day?
It means living on top of slow, constant geological action. Sakhalin Oblast sits right on what's called a subduction zone.
Okay.
That's where the huge Pacific plate is actually diving, or subducting, underneath the Eurasian plate. It's like the engine driving almost everything there.
So that movement, it's continent-level stuff. How fast are we talking?
It's slow but relentless. The analogy in the sources was like boiling water on an electric stove, steady, not jerky, only about 2 or 3 centimeters a year.
Just centimeters. Seems tiny.
It does, but think about that constant grinding pressure over millions of years. It builds up incredible stress. Nearby Kamchatka, for instance, the data showed it shifted 2 meters because of these forces.
Wow. 2 meters. Okay, that puts it in perspective. And the Kuril Islands, they're born from this.
Directly. They're essentially volcanoes pushed up by that plate collision. That's why the Kurils are volcanically active. Sakhalin Island itself is, interestingly, a bit quieter.
Quieter how?
Well, it gets major earthquakes because it's so close to the action, but it doesn't have active volcanoes on the island itself. The Kurils took the brunt of that volcanic formation.
And with all that seismic activity, tsunamis are a major risk. What's the crucial safety advice from the sources?
Speed. If you feel a quake near the coast, the absolute rule is get to high ground immediately. Or get as far inland away from the shore as fast as you can.
Right.
The strange thing is, the wave itself is harmless out in the deep ocean. It only becomes this destructive wall of water when it hits the shallow coastal area.
Okay, so a land forged by such power, it must have shaped the cultures that live there too. Let's talk about the first peoples.
Yeah, the indigenous groups, primarily the Nifk, who were sometimes called Gilyaks, and the Ainu. The Nifk are incredibly ancient, one of Siberia's oldest peoples.
Only about 4,000 left today, the sources said.
Sadly, yes, a small population now, but their culture is fascinatingly adapted. Think about their clothing. Made from fish skin.
Fish skin. Sounds unusual, but it worked.
Absolutely. Properly treated, it's windproof, surprisingly tough. They had these winter homes, sort of earthen dugouts called yurtas, and then summer houses raised on stilts to avoid the damp ground. Masters of adaptation.
And they relied heavily on the sea, obviously. I like that detail about red caviar being their jam.
Yeah, it tells you something about the abundance, doesn't it? Their staple food was ukala, this sun-dried fish. And culturally, we should mention Vladimir Sangi,
Who was he?
a Nifklan who actually created the Nifk written alphabet. His story inspired the famous writer Chingiz Aytmatov for his novel The Piebald Dog Running Along the Shore, a really significant figure.
And the Ainu.
The Ainu, meaning true people, they were the original inhabitants, especially of the Kurils, known for their very distinctive, often painful, symbolic tattoos, particularly the ones around women's lips.
Where are they now?
Over time, they largely assimilated or migrated south towards Hokkaido in Japan, so their presence is much stronger there today.
Okay, shifting from people to place names. Sakhalin itself. You mentioned the name is basically a mistake.
It is a pretty big geographical blunder, actually. It comes from French map makers centuries ago. They saw the Manchu words Sakhalin Ula, meaning Rock of the Black River, referring to the Amur River on the mainland.
Right.
But they mistakenly applied that label to the island on their map, so the name Sakhalin stuck, even though it originally pointed to the river.
Wow. History's little accidents. So after the indigenous peoples, the explorers started arriving, Russians, Westerners.
Yeah, in the 17th, 18th centuries, we see Russians like Ivan Moskoutin reaching the Amur area, and then Western explorers like the Dutchman Martin de Vries.
He's the one who named the Gulf of Patience.
That's him. Apparently, his ship got stuck in a really thick fog bank there for days. He had no choice but to wait it out patiently. A relatable feeling, maybe?
Definitely. And the French explorer La Perouse.
Jean-François La Pérouse. He left his name on the strait between Sakhalin and Hokkaido, and he also named the Tatar Strait.
Why Tatar?
It was a nod to that sort of mysterious region called Tartaria that kept appearing on old European maps of Asia. A bit of cartographic mystery there.
But the real game changer, the big dramatic story, involves Captain Gennady Novelskoy. This guy basically committed a felony.
You could say that. At the time, the official Russian position in St. Petersburg was that Sakhalin was a peninsula connected to mainland China, part of the Qing dynasty.
But Novelskoy didn't buy it.
No, he was convinced it was an island. And he understood that proving it was key for Russia to control the area and the mouth of the Amur River, he was given orders to sail to Kamchatka.
And he just,
He deliberately disobeyed specific instructions not to explore the Amur estuary, sailed right in, proved Sakhalin was separated by a strait, a huge act of defiance.
that sounds like career suicide for a naval officer. What happened?
Initially, yeah, his superiors were furious. They drew up papers to demote him to a common sailor, strip him of his rank.
Ouch.
But when Tsar Nicholas I got the report, he saw the immense strategic value of Novelsko's discovery. So in this classic historical turnaround, he supposedly tore up the punishment order
No way.
and instead awarded Novelskoy a high military order, called him a true hero of the fatherland. His wife's description of him, a noble, irreproachable hero, really captures that vindication.
Incredible story. But Novelskoy's heroic act, proving it was an island, also opened the door for something much darker, didn't it?
Tragically, yes. His work led to serious Russian settlement, the founding of Muravyovsky Post, that's now the city of Korsakov. But it also directly paved the way for Sakhalin to become a katorga.
A penal colony from 1869 to 1906.
Exactly, a brutal place, and this grim reality attracted one of Russia's greatest writers,
Anton Chekhov.
Anton Chekhov. He was already sick with tuberculosis, only 30 years old. And he made this incredibly difficult 80-day journey all the way out there.
Why? What drove him?
It wasn't for adventure. The sources stress his motivation was purely humanitarian. As a doctor and a writer, he said he wanted to understand people. He didn't just observe, he conducted a detailed census of the convicts, documented the horrific conditions. His book, Sakhalin Island, is a landmark work of investigative reporting.
So if we fast forward to today, Sakhalin's the capital. What's it like now? Does it still feel like Chekhov's Island?
It's a fascinating mix. You have to remember the Japanese occupied the southern part for over 40 years until 1945. They called the city Toyohara.
Ah, so there's Japanese influence.
Definitely. The most striking example is the regional museum building. It's built in this very distinct Japanese architectural style called Taikan-zukuri. Very grand, symmetrical, heavy-roofed. You can't miss it.
But it's also modern.
Oh, yeah. Surprisingly so. One thing mentioned was the prevalence of these large, colorful murals on buildings, like nearly 90 of them. High-quality street art really changing the city's look.
And just outside the city, the natural world gets pretty dramatic again. Let's talk about Bus Lagoon, seafood paradise.
It really sounds like it. It's this lagoon connected to the Sea of Okhotsk. And at low tide, apparently, it's just teeming with huge oysters, scallops, sea urchins.
And you could just find them.
Yeah, the sources say giant oysters are literally right under your feet. You can just wade out and collect them. Talk about fresh seafood. It sounds incredibly accessible.
Amazing. Beyond the food, there's Cape Velikan with its rock arches, but also this weird plant gigantism.
Yeah, that sounds slightly unsettling, doesn't it? Common plants like cow parsnip and burdock growing enormous, like 2.5 meters tall.
You could get lost in a field of weeds.
Apparently. But locals make use of it. The giant leaves are used like umbrellas or for wrapping fish to bake, so they've incorporated this strange natural phenomenon into daily life.
Before we leave Sakhalin Island proper, we need to touch on that sad history in Korsakov, the Korean laborers.
Yes, that's a really somber note. During the Japanese occupation, Mitsubishi brought tens of thousands of Koreans over, mostly for forced labor in the coal mines.
And after the war?
When Japan surrendered in 1945 and withdrew, these Korean workers were just abandoned, left stateless, without resources. It was a terrible situation. There's a memorial there now, the Mountain of Tears and Sorrow, a very poignant reminder.
Okay, let's move down the island chain now to the Kurils. 56 islands, but only 4 inhabited. We look closely at Iturup, the biggest one.
Iturup sounds like pure geology in action. 9 active volcanoes just on that one island. The landscape must be incredible.
Like what? What stands out?
Well, there's the Yanakido Plateau. That's where lava flows have met the sea. Then the famous White Rocks.
White Rock?
Yeah, they're made of pumice stone, which is so porous and light from volcanic gases that it can actually float on water. And contrasting that, you have black sands made of heavy magnetite, this dark, magnetic mineral. It's a really dramatic contrast.
And near Buransky Volcano.
Yeah.
There's a boiling river, people actually cook in it.
Apparently, yes. The river gets heated by the volcano, sometimes up to 100 degrees Celsius boiling point.
Seriously?
Yeah. Locals and tourists have set up bathing pools in areas where it's cooler, of course, but in the hotter sections, they literally lower baskets of eggs into the water. Takes about 10-15 minutes, and voila, volcano-cooked eggs.
That's wild. Volcano meets picnic.
Pretty much.
Iturup also has this huge historical weight connected to World War II.
Yes, Kasatka Bay. This was the site of a massive secret Japanese underground military base during the war. Tunnels, storage, even a hospital, all carved into the rock.
And critically.
Critically, it was from Kasatka Bay that the Japanese naval fleet secretly departed for its attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. A major point in world history happened right there.
Okay, moving south again to Kudashir Island. The history here gets really tangled, involving diplomacy gone wrong. The Strait of Betrayal.
Ah, yes. This is a fascinating and complicated story. It starts with a Russian envoy, Nikolai Ryazanov. His mission partly inspired the famous Russian rock opera Juno and Avos, though the romance part is myth.
Right.
Ryazanov tried to open trade relations with Japan, but he was rebuffed. So, in retaliation, he ordered attacks on Japanese settlements in the Kurils, kind of a punitive strike.
Okay, aggressive move. How did that lead to betrayal?
Years later, another Russian diplomat, Vasily Golovnin, sailed into the same area. He had no idea about Ryazanov's earlier attacks. The Japanese, however, remembered very clearly. They captured Golovnin and his crew.
Because of the earlier incident?
Exactly. Golovnin was essentially paying the price for Ryazanov's actions years before. That whole episode, the capture resulting from the previous conflict, is sometimes referred to locally as the Strait of Betrayal, a major diplomatic blunder with long-lasting consequences.
But Golovnin, while imprisoned, he actually did something remarkable.
He really did. He was held for over 2 years, but he used that time incredibly well. He learned Japanese, compiled one of the very first detailed Russian-Japanese dictionaries, and wrote incredibly thorough accounts of Japanese culture, geography, everything he observed.
So he turned this disaster into a huge contribution to knowledge.
Absolutely, a testament to making the best of a terrible situation.
Now, for anyone listening who's inspired to visit these incredibly wild islands,
Yeah.
safety is a big concern. What's the main takeaway from the sources?
Bears. Bears are a significant presence throughout most of the Kurils. And the number one rule, counterintuitive as it might feel, is do not run if you encounter one.
Don't run. Why not?
Running triggers their chase instinct, their predatory response. The advice is to stand your ground, make yourself look big, group together if you're with others, and make a lot of noise. Shout, yell, clap.
So loud noises are key.
Yes, bears generally seem to be wary of loud, confident human sounds. The interesting exception is Shakotan Island.
What's special about Shakotan?
No bears and no poisonous snakes either, which is why locals apparently call it the edge of the world. It feels safer, maybe a bit more serene in that respect.
Okay, so let's bring this all together. We've journeyed through a land defined by, well, geological collision, ancient cultures like the Nif and Ainu, traumatic exploration tales like Nevelskoy's Defiance, Chekhov's deep dive into human suffering. It's a place constantly in flux.
Exactly. And that sense of collision, of unresolved forces, continues right up to the present day, especially politically. The big issue is the ownership dispute over the southern Kurils and southern Sakhalin between Russia and Japan.
Right. This goes back to the end of World War II and the treaties afterwards, specifically the 1951 San Francisco Treaty.
That's the crucial document. In it, Japan officially renounced all rights and claims to the Kuril Islands and to the southern part of Sakhalin that it had controlled.
Okay, so they renounced the claim. End of story.
Not quite. Here's the snag. The Soviet Union refused to sign the San Francisco Treaty. And perhaps more importantly, the treaty text itself never actually specified which country Japan was ceding the territory to.
A critical
A
omission.
very critical one. Because the USSR didn't sign, and because there was no named recipient of the territory, Japan argues its renunciation isn't fully binding in relation to Russia, as the USSR's successor state, or that the specific islands they now claim weren't technically part of the Kurils renounced. Russia, of course, bases its claim on the outcome of WWII and subsequent agreements.
So this gap, this ambiguity in the treaty is why the dispute is still alive today.
It's a core reason, yes. It leaves the door open for ongoing disagreement. And that political tension remains a major factor in Russo-Japanese relations. A land of fire and sea where the ground is still shifting, and so is the history.
A really powerful place to end our deep dive. What will the future hold for these islands? It's a question still being debated. Thank you for joining us. We definitely encourage you to dig into the sources yourself. Maybe start with Chekhov's Sakhalin Island. It's quite the read.